He was facing years in prison, but now a Minnesota man shares his story for the first time since his charges related to January 6th have been dismissed by President Donald Trump. Next. Jonah Westbury is my guest. Jonah, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Liz, thank you so much for having me on.
You know, we've been profiling your family's story. Never had the chance to talk to you, but just to remind our viewers, along with your two brothers and your father, you were charged in the wake of January 6th. You were just 25 when you took that trip to D.C. back in 2021. Just to begin with here, walk us through what you were doing that day and what happened.
Well, you know, the day of January 6th, you definitely felt a buzz in the air. When we all woke up, it was an early morning. You know, our goal and the reason why me and my family were going out there was to go and see the president speak. He was having a rally due to the election that happened in 2020. We all know that there were some discrepancies, to say the least, that occurred during that. So myself, my mom, actually, my mother is the one who really felt the calling. And we found a trip that was too good to pass for my whole family to make a trip out there. The day of January 6th, it started out just like any other day. Obviously, it's imprinted in my mind a little bit more so than others. But we got up bright and early and we started walking towards the area where the president was going to be speaking, right outside of the presidential lawn, right by the Washington Monument. When we awoke that day, I mean, obviously January 6th now is, you know, the Capitol, all of that stuff that happened there. None of us had any inkling of a desire that, hey, one day, today, January 6th, we're going to be going down to the Capitol. That never happened until the end of the president's speech, which the barricades that they had around the Capitol, those were removed well before the president was even done speaking. So the majority of people, myself included, didn't even leave the grounds where the president was giving his speech until the first breaches in the lines of the perimeter of the Capitol were first breached. We, again, like I said, we didn't have any intentions of actually going to the Capitol until at the end of the speech, the president told the whole crowd, you know, let's peacefully walk down Constitutional Avenue and peacefully let our voices be heard. So until that happened, we had no intentions of going down there. But then the whole masses, there was hundreds of thousands of people there, started walking towards the Capitol. My family and myself included started walking towards the Capitol. By the time that we had got to the Capitol, there was already some, obviously, I think, bad actors that were there previous to the majority of people showing up that were doing things that I wouldn't condone, nor would 99% of the people that were there would condone. But I distinctly remember we get there, it's shoulder to shoulder, you can't move anywhere. We're by the pool where the Ulysses S. Grant statue is. And we started hearing banging, like cannon fire, it sounded like. And my father thought that they were firing cannons off. And it was actually the police that were firing CS gas into the crowds. So we hear this, me and my brothers and my dad, we wanted to kind of get a closer look. So we made our way through the crowds and we just wanted to see what was happening exactly. There's plenty of video, plenty of different angles that you guys can see of what actually was occurring that day. Now, what happened to me and my family is we made our way around the Capitol towards the front of the Capitol, but it was the back to us when we arrived there. And we were just observing. I was actually filming that whole day on my Snapchat. I was like live streaming it, recording it, putting it onto my story, which incidentally was the reason why I ultimately was picked off so quickly. But we can get to that. We go up to the Capitol where we're on the Capitol steps. The doors were opened up from the inside. There was a group that was close to the Capitol doors. There were police officers that were there. We actually pushed crowd members back to allow for police officers to get out due to the fact that they were getting compressed between a small space. There's a big crowd building up, and there were police officers caught between the doors. Me and my family would go up there. We make a way in the actual crowd, me and my brother Isaac, for cops to come flowing out to where there were more cops off to the other side. The doors opened up, and then chaos happened. People from the outside started flowing in. My father in all of this had gotten sprayed in the face with pepper spray, and he's an older man. He's had multiple strokes. He's in his 60s at this time. He falls down. me and my brother Isaac, we get him up, and a cop actually brings him into the Capitol and sets him down on the bench. And me and my brother Aaron, my brother Isaac, we all go and we go into the Capitol as well, to the bench area where my father was. Now, again, like I'm saying, I was live streaming this whole day on my Snapchat. I just continued to stream that event, right? I just continued to kind of document what was happening that day. There really was no, you would think that if this was like a violent insurrection, people are bringing fire and pitchforks to the Capitol building, there would be damage, there would be destruction, there would be, mass hysteria. There really was none of that. People inside of the Capitol building were, for the most part, extremely reverent of the area. That's the word that comes to my mind. There were velvet ropes that were up, priceless paintings that were on the walls. Nothing was defaced. Nothing was destroyed. There was no vandalism. There was no ill intent. The only intent that people had, me and my family, I can speak for myself, that we had was we wanted to peacefully let our voices be heard by our government. One of our amendment rights is to redress our grievances with the government. That's our First Amendment right. We went to the Capitol to utilize that right. And obviously the media misconstrued that day astronomically. I mean, I remember even getting back to the hotel later that same day and people reaching out to me, conservatives, people that were, Republicans, like very outraged at the day. Now, if I was not there that day and witnessed the events firsthand, based on what the media had told me and what I saw on Fox News or Channel 11 or whatever your local media station is, they can sell whatever story that they want. The people that were there that day are good people, God-fearing people who love this country, who truly just wanted to peacefully let our voices be heard like the president told us.
And Jonah, that's a good point. So your dad is actually escorted into the Capitol, and the only reason you even go inside, the doors are open again, which I think is a point to make as well, is to help him, to get him. You're not even inside the Capitol that long, but it's this Snapchat, this live stream that ends up getting you in trouble. Months later, a former classmate turned you in?
Yes, that is correct. It was funny because after obviously January 6th, we come back, we fly home. Everything is, there are no indications that we should be worried or have any sort of like fear that the FBI is going to come bust our door down, right? But I had gotten a text actually from one of my other classmates, like, did you see what X, Y, and this classmate posted on Twitter? And she sent me a screenshot of it. And it said, I never thought I'd see the day where I'd turn one of my former classmates into the FBI. Didn't dox me, like didn't put my name out there or anything, but obviously I'm probably the only classmate that he's going to be doing that to. So I know who he is. I'm never going to say his name. I'm never worried about it. I've forgiven him, and he's a social justice warrior that believes what he was doing was correct, right? So I have no ill will or anything towards him. But based on that, he did get a hold of the Snapchat story. That did eventually lead the FBI to come knocking on my door.
And you were the first in your family to be arrested. And we've seen some of the video from those raids. Talk a little bit more about that in Lindstrom. It's truly shocking.
Well, yeah, the FBI decided to pay 2 visits to the house, one for myself and then one later in October. But they came to the house 3 times. One time was in February. It was just 2 FBI agents. My brother Aaron was currently at the house. I was not there then. But he called me, hey, Jonah, there's, an FBI agent is here looking for you. He gave me his card information, and within a half an hour, I had a lawyer on retainer, gave him the FBI agent's info, and had my lawyer reach out to the FBI agent. This was in February. They went back and forth 1 or 2 conversations, and then the FBI just went completely dark. There was no longer any communication back from them. Fast forward to April 9th of 2021, early morning, it's a Friday, and you hear a loud bang, 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 FBI open up like you hear in the movies, And initially I thought it was one of my brothers playing a prank, but it was the FBI, and there was 25 to 30 agents fully vested up, like bulletproof vest-ons, ballistic vests, AR-15s. I mean, my brother Aaron, I'm not a veteran. My brother Aaron is a veteran, and he was a corpsman with, Navy SEALs and Marines out truly seeing live action in the Middle East. And he said that the equipment that they were utilizing and how they approached the house was how he would clear houses looking for terrorists in the Middle East. My charges were 4 misdemeanors, none of them violent, no felonies. And they showed up and it looked like a scene from a movie where you would have a serial killer with 30 bodies in the basement. That's how they showed up in force to come after myself. This was following me having a lawyer reaching out to them, willing to come down and talk.
Yeah, I want to get into that more. Along with your dad, you're facing 2 years in prison. You mentioned those charges, but entering and remaining in a restricted building, disorderly and disruptive conduct in a restricted building, and parading or demonstrating in a Capitol building, all misdemeanors. Your brothers, though, face up to 20 years. They held up shields to simply block pepper spray as they tried to work to save Roseanne Boylan's life. But in the years that have passed, your family has fought through the turmoil in court, but also the Minnesota media. Maybe it's better to say the absolute joke of Minnesota media. But out of everything you and your family has been through, they've ignored your side of the story completely, only to focus on their narrative. And this story, I think, really speaks to that. The Chisago County Press recently published this story with the headline, U.S. Capitol breach defendant okayed to travel out of country. The fact that you were permitted to go on your honeymoon recently was apparently newsworthy to them. Never mind how they ignored the bigger story, the greater injustice than what happened to you just recently on your trip. You actually lose a day of your honeymoon due to what our government has done to your family.
Yeah, I mean, the news media, there have been, since the pardons have happened, there have been multiple different news outlets that have reached out to myself and other family members. We've declined to comment with all of them other than yourself, just because we want to talk to people who actually want to promote the truth. We want to talk to people like yourself. The other news outlets, they obviously have one narrative that they want to push to people, and they want to get little snippet gotcha moments. So we're not in the business of giving those out, right? But to kind of speak on the honeymoon, we did lose a day, like you said. Whenever I travel, I am hopefully going to was after this process goes through fully in the DHS, the Department of Homeland Security, on a terrorist watch list. Me, along with every other January 6th defendant, is on that watch list. So this started back in 2021 right away. Whenever I would travel, you get 4 S's that are printed on your boarding pass, and you have to go through multiple different enhanced screenings. It's a secondary selection screening process. They say it's completely random, but if you're a January 6th defendant, you know that you're on some sort of a targeted list. This has affected me and my family in multiple ways. One of the first times that it actually affected us was my brother Aaron and my mom. My brother Aaron had lost his aunt, which was my mom's step-sister-in-law from her previous marriage, and they were going to travel down to Florida, and they got there 2 hours ahead of time, just like a standard travel should be, to get onto the plane, especially just to take a quick flight down to Florida, and they missed their flight. It wasn't due to the fact that they weren't there on time. It was due to the fact that they make you go through this process, TSA. You get through security. They take all your belongings out of your carry-on. They wipe them all down for explosive powder, things like that. And then once you get to the gate, they do the same thing all over again. So they're just kind of utilizing their power just to inconvenience you a little bit. They lost their flight. They weren't able to get onto a different flight. They missed his aunt's funeral. More recently, myself and my now wife were going on our honeymoon out of country. We obviously got the judge's approval because I was still pre-trial at that point in time, and we left January 7th bright and early. Now, I'd known going into this process that I was most likely going to have these 4 S's on my boarding pass, and I had assumed that my wife would as well, just because she would be a traveling companion of mine. When we got to MSP to go down to Miami, we had MSP to Miami and then Miami to Antigua. Our flight to Miami, we again have to go through the process. We had 2 checked bags this time. So we go up, you're not able to use the kiosk where you're able to print your boarding pass off. You have to go talk to a ticketing agent, and then they're on the phone for anywhere from like a half an hour to 45 minutes talking to somebody trying to get the okay to print off our boarding passes. After that process is done, we then had to go and drop our check-in bags off at the oversized luggage area, where essentially TSA just goes through your check-ins, article by article, pulling everything out, and then getting their okay to actually ship it. Following that, you then have to go through the TSA checkpoint, go through extra security, where again, they pat you down. It's a very aggressive pat down. My wife had to go through this, and I think that's unjust. Like she has no criminal record whatsoever. I have no criminal record whatsoever. This is all for something pre-trial, right? But we get to Miami, all is well, all is good. Our connecting flight, we had about an hour and a half to make the connecting flight. We're, hustling. We got moved to the front of the plane, thank God. And then we made it to the gate to get to Antigua on the same day, January 7th, that we should have. And TSA had reset up there again for me and for my wife to do their extra security checks. This time they wipe her phone down, and the alarm goes off on their wipes, saying that there was some sort of explosive chemicals on her device. Now, what can also trigger this, we found this out later, is makeup, right? Female makeup. So if you have your phone up to your face, a little bit of makeup can also give it a false trigger, which after our plane had left, no other planes for that day, we found out it was a false trigger. So we missed a day of our honeymoon, which we can't get that day back. You can't get the money back. It's just an inconvenience. But we had to deal with that just because the government wanted to flex their power a little bit. The next day when this is the 8th, we have to go through the same process again in Miami TSA and then again at the gate. Thank God we're able to get onto the plane that day. And then getting into Antigua, it was actually kind of crazy because we get in, my wife, she shows her passport to the customs agent in Antigua. She gets through. I show mine to them. A little alarm on the screen goes off or something, and I'm actually brought into a back room, and I'm sat down with the head of customs there, a female, and doors closed. My wife's not allowed to come in, and she interrogates me. She's like, "Oh, why? What are you doing here? Why are you here in Antigua? What is your intentions here? What were you doing in 2021?" She had my name. She had a paper on her desk with my name handwritten down, my flight number, like all the dates when I was going to get in here. We go through this process for about 5 minutes. She finally softens up and have a great time in Antigua. She was a very nice lady. But when I asked her, what caused this? Why did this happen? She just said, the higher ups, this is the process that I have to go through. I was like, who's having her do this? Who is putting this onto her desk in a handwritten note that they have to stop me? And for what purpose? What have I done? I don't even have a parking ticket in my history. I have literally no criminal history whatsoever. Getting back into the States, same process again. Anybody that's ever had the 4S's, the process, how annoying it can be. Going through customs, we flew through Charlotte, coming back into the country, got stopped again at our customs. There were 2 great gentlemen there, though, actually, who made the process very, very seamless, who actually worked for the government, 2 great men, who made the process quick and painless for both myself and my wife. And then getting home, the last little jab that we could get, TSA had to inspect our bags after they had already went through an inspection in Antigua in Charlotte. So we get home and we get an email from American Airlines that our bags weren't going to make it. So we had to wait for our bags for another couple of days. So it's every single step that they could get us, they got us.
So you're talking about everything that you're going through on this trip as this is all kind of unfolding the pardons, but you have also this mainstream media narrative that is suggesting you can't be pro-cop and support the J6 pardons. The Minneapolis police chief here locally is calling the pardons disgusting. It sure does seem like an awful lot of people don't care about the truth. Do you have anything to say about that?
My question for the Minneapolis police chiefs is what would his stance be towards the rioters, the true rioters that destroyed my home city of Minneapolis? There was billions of dollars of damage. Law officers were hurt. Precincts were burned down to the ground. Federal buildings were burned. Where was the outrage for that from left-leaning people? Everybody that got a pardon that day for the January 6 events, the protests that happened at January 6, deserved it. There were bad actors in that crowd, and many of them, as we found out after the fact, were planted there by our intelligence agencies. I think that is something that needs to be looked at. Is it a coincidence that the whole January 6th committee got a pardon from Biden before he left. If there's no crime, why is there a pardon coming out, right? I think that to be pro-cop is exactly what people like myself are. I have no ill will nor ill intentions towards any police officers. I have the utmost respect for them. But people that were really there that day, people like myself, respected police officers, did everything that we could to help and protect officers. I think that it's an unfair stance for somebody that has that much authority to take once something like this has happened.
President Trump then, within his first hours in office, dropped the charges against people who were caught up in the so-called J6 insurrection, including yourself. How did that feel? Talk about that moment to have the president of the United States take such action on your behalf.
You know, Liz, over the past 4 years, I've struggled a little bit with kind of having faith and belief in America. I thought that following the 2020 election, especially, I thought that we were going in a good direction. I was 25. I'm not old. I don't have my wisdom yet, but I'm trying to evaluate and be as much of a contributing adult as I can. And I really thought America was going in a good direction. Following that 2020 election, I really kind of lost faith in America. And I thought that maybe this is the path that we were going. And I sadly started having like a bleak outlook for the future, like for my maybe unborn children's future. But this past election, especially seeing the way that the American public came out in droves, and not only did we take back the presidency, we took the Senate, the House as a sweeping red wave that came over the nation. It made me proud to be an American. I've always been proud to be an American, but it restored my faith, I guess, in America. And Donald Trump is not Jesus. Jesus is the only one that saves us, right? But Donald Trump is a man who's sticking to his words, and I have nothing but the utmost respect and thanks for that. I also think that President Trump has a chance now in the second term after seeing what happened in his first term. He entered not being a politician, right? He entered and he faced many obstacles, many combatants, many snakes in the grass. But I think in the second term, knowing what he knows now, seeing what happened in 2020, I think that this is going to be a great time for the American people.
Unfortunately, though, the legal battles have cost your family tens of thousands of dollars at this point. A Give, Send, Go account has been set up to help you and your family. Making things worse, though, you lost your job over this early on. But do you have any regrets about going to the Capitol that day?
I don't have any regrets for going out there and for showing support for President Trump. All of my actions that day were done with a good conscience. I did not break any laws. I did not commit any heinous crimes that day. Every one of my actions and every one of my family's actions were done out of good conscience, and also genuinely we were there to support our president. And would I go back? I would do it all over in a heartbeat. Do I want to put up with the rigmarole that I've had over the past 4 years? Of course not, but I don't think that that should have been the case from the get-go.
Well, we'll go ahead and be sure to link that fund. I know the fight isn't over for your family. We look forward to the lawsuit likely being filed on your behalf for everything you've been through. But Jonah Westbury, we wish you well. Thank you so much for being here.
Liz, thank you so much. Me and my family are genuinely appreciative for you and for you being so open to represent people like ourselves. God bless.
God bless you right back. That will do it for this episode of Liz Collin Reports. We'll see you next time.